Why is the scientific community ignoring the dangerous ramifications of this essential question about the cause of AIDS? Do we have an answer?
Yes, in retrospect, we certainly do. Too many people are making too much money out of it. And money is much stronger than truth.
If the AIDS establishment will not respond to this issue, then it's time that the public heard the evidence against HIV and demand answers. For the next few minutes, we'll show you why HIV fails as the cause of AIDS and what the real causes could be. We will also explain to you why AIDS is not being caused by conventional sex and why the clean needle and safe sex programs will do little to stop AIDS. You'll have to pay close attention and do some thinking. First, 10 scientific reasons why HIV is not the cause of AIDS. To begin with, let's take a close microscopic look at the virus itself. Number 1. HIV, like all other viruses, is harmless after antibody immunity. HIV is a retrovirus. Retroviruses reproduce themselves through a process called reverse transcription. Its receptacle attaches to the coating of the T cell. It penetrates the cell and encodes its RNA genes into the cell's DNA. And as the cell multiplies, the new viruses break free and go on to reproduce themselves in other cells. Like all viral infections, HIV reproduces rapidly immediately after it infects the body, causing a slight fever and some cold symptoms. But nature has given the human body a built-in defense called antibodies. These tiny protein molecules are generated by the B lymphocyte blood cells to track down and kill invading infections like HIV. Antibodies scour the entire system until all the invading germs are dead or become dormant and inactive. Antibodies are the reason why we get well after a cold and become immune to diseases like chickenpox or the measles. Ironically, when a person is tested for HIV with the blood test, they are not testing for the virus, but the antibody that has been generated to stop it. When a person tests positive to HIV, they have produced their own antibody vaccine, which means they are now immune to the virus. All infectious diseases must win the race against the immune system's antibodies to kill the host. There are no known diseases that ever reemerge to cause the illness after the antibodies have done their job.
No, there's no such disease, no precedent for it. All other microbes cause diseases primarily before immunity, before antibodies are around. And that's the only reason why you and I are talking now, because antibodies protect us against microbes. Once you have antibodies, you're safe against these microbes. The whole basis for vaccination, 200 years old. Edward Jenner came up with that, or others too, but he did. He's the name in it. There's not one precedent where a microbe only causes disease after immunity. Some come back. There are always some marginal exceptions to this generalization. It's not a real exception, but partial. But none ever had caused the disease only after antibodies appeared, which is how AIDS is defined. None.
Every 8th grade biology student should question why this basic fact of science has been turned upside down with HIV. The taxpayer should ask why we've spent 12 years and billions of dollars developing a vaccine against HIV when the best vaccine possible already exists when an individual tests positive. Reason number 2. HIV does not kill the T cells it infects. AIDS patients are losing T cells, and because these are the cells HIV infects, it was assumed that HIV was killing them. But only under rare laboratory conditions do retroviruses kill their host cells. In fact, Robert Gallo and other AIDS researchers use T cells to grow the virus because T cells live quite compatibly with HIV. This claim that a retrovirus was killing T cells was what sparked Peter Duesberg's suspicions based on his experience with retroviruses in cancer research.
And here Gallo comes along and says, well, HIV is causing AIDS by killing T cells. When the T cells are killed, the immune deficient, and immune deficiency produces AIDS. That didn't seem to fit with everything we ever learned about retroviruses and knew about retroviruses, namely that retroviruses do not kill cells. Retroviruses are set apart from virtually all other animal viruses we know, human and animal viruses, in that they do not kill the cell they infect, ever. They're not killer viruses. That's why they are at least plausible cancer viruses causing a disease. A virus that could cause a cancer disease would be one that couldn't kill a cell. If it killed the cell, there wouldn't be a cancer.
Reason number 3. HIV does not infect enough T cells to cause AIDS. Even if HIV killed the T cells it infects, it does not infect enough cells to cause AIDS. Shortly after HIV is brought under control by the antibody defense, the billions of virus particles become dormant and begin to disappear. Before long, the virus can hardly be found in T cells at all, infecting only one cell out of every 1,000, and sometimes as few as one cell out of every 100,000. On the other hand, T cells can reproduce at the rate of 5% a day. Simple math proves that HIV cannot infect enough T cells to cause them to die off and bring down the entire immune system. Even supporters of HIV admit that this low amount of T cell infection is a challenge to explain.
AIDS patients are characterized by the deficiency or depletion of T cells. They lack T cells, that's why they are AIDS patients. But when the first data appeared, in fact, many from Gallo's, the first real good data on that came from Gallo's lab. The surprising news was there was no virus found in T cells. Practically none. In fact, the notorious difficulties of our nation's leading, at that time, leading AIDS researcher, Robert Gallo, in finding the virus led him to his now well-known problems with essentially appropriating or misappropriating, stealing the virus from Montagnier. He couldn't isolate the virus because there was no virus there, not because he's incompetent, simply he confirmed what we are just talking about, there is no virus in AIDS patients, only antibodies against it. So if 1 in 1,000 cells or even 1 in 100 cells is infected by a virus, you won't get a disease from it, you won't die from it. In order to die from a depletion of T cells, you would need to have a virus that kills more than half of them. It's like saying you're dying, you're a 25-year-old man suffering a fatal disease or dying from a fatal disease because you stuck yourself with a needle or cut yourself while shaving. You're losing about 100s or thousands of your blood with a bad cut and shaving. You're not going to die from that. But that's what Gallo's hypothesis actually said.
Reason number 4. HIV has no AIDS-causing gene. HIV has no specific gene or unique genetic reason to cause AIDS. All retroviruses have only 3 major genes, GAG, INF, and POL, and only 6 minor genes. Because the genes and genetic sequences are so limited in these very simple little viruses, they need all the genes to replicate. HIV is almost identical to all other retroviruses genetically. What most people do not know is that there are as many as 50 to 100 of these retroviruses that can be found in every healthy human body. All have the same 3 genes, and all are kept under control by antibodies after infection. HIV behaves no differently than the others in the way that it mutates, becomes dormant, and reactivates. So the question is, if none of these other retroviruses cause diseases, why should HIV? Or vice versa, if HIV causes AIDS, why don't all the rest? So there's no genetic reason to explain why HIV would cause AIDS. Number 5. There is no such thing as a slow virus. HIV is said to be a slow virus that takes 10 to 12 years after infection to cause AIDS. The only way to explain this is to give HIV magical abilities to reactivate, mutate, migrate, and hibernate. These slow virus hypotheses were devised by scientists like Gaddusek and Gallo, who used them to buy time when their disease-causing agent failed to perform. They based their slow virus hypotheses on studies of Epstein-Barr, which was supposed to cause a cancer 10 years after infection, and herpes viruses that hide and reemerge in persons who have suppressed immunity and can't generate a sufficient defense. But these differ greatly from HIV, because in both cases large amounts of active virus can be found, causing specific symptoms. In total contrast, HIV is inactive, then is said to cause 30 different diseases 10 years later, none of which are specific to HIV itself. Peter Duesberg says, "There's no such thing as a slow virus, only slow virologists."